interested to find out what was the set of circumstances around which you started your publication, Zimbabwe Digital News.
Look, there is a significant number of Zimbabweans that are living in South Africa, and many of them do, a whole lot of good things, innovation, in education, discoveries, scientific things, and so on, in business and other things. So our newspaper grew out of a need to fill the information gap of some of those people who might not get a chance to be, profiled either in your mainstream media, in your newspapers, on TV and radio and so on. So our newspaper, Zimbabwe Digital News, exists to fill that gap of profiling all the people and all the things that are happening among the Zimbabweans in the diaspora, and especially those that are living in South Africa.
Now, it's no secret that the media who have been operating as inside Zimbabwe have not had the easiest of jobs over the last few years, especially under Robert Mugabe, who clamped down on independent media violently in some times. Have you found that your newspaper has also become a source of information for those seeking independent and other news from inside the country itself?
Well, yes, indeed. But the one thing that I really want to point out there in answer to your question is the fact that there has been an explosion of mobile, internet, and social media, which have become vehicles for spreading a whole mix of fake news, rumors, hatred, disinformation and misinformation. And this has happened because there are no explicit official rules on the use of social media in elections in Zimbabwe. And besides the fundamental shifts in the Zimbabwean political field right now, the one thing that distinguishes this election from previous ones is that there's been a real explosion of mobile, internet and social media, and information is generated far much more easily. It spreads very rapidly and more widely than before. You simply cannot ignore the fact that there has been a vicious propaganda war on social media, and we as Zimbabwe Digital News, we have reported extensively on how the media, whether it is the international media, your BBCs, your CNNs, your Al Jazeera and so forth, but also South African media like, the South African Broadcasting Corporation, as well as ENCA and, the radio stations like 702 and all others who have got journalists and media teams in Zimbabwe. But the one thing that is for sure is the fact that there's been this vicious propaganda war and fake news that has dominated the Zimbabwean politics, which are taking place tomorrow.
Now, I was quite fascinated to read in one of the articles from your website that the main parties, the ZANU-PF and the MDC, has actually put that element of online news and propaganda, some people would call it, to use. You even say that the ZANU-PF's online warriors are known as the Varakashi, while the MDC's terrorists have been kind of at war with propaganda news and fake news to try and garner more support. It's quite a fascinating element when it comes to electioneering, isn't it?
True. What you say is very true. If I can just, bounce around some figures there, internet penetration has increased by 41%. 41.1% from 11% of the population to 52.1% between 2010 and 2018, while mobile phone penetration in Zimbabwe has risen by 43.8% from 58% to 102% over the same period. So that means that half of the population of Zimbabwe has got internet access compared to just about 11% in 2010. So ideally, these technologies should be harnessed for the greater good, such as voter education and so on. But instead, what we are seeing is that the internet, social media, Facebook, WhatsApp and so on, they have been used by the different interest groups, in this case the political parties, in a way that poses a far greater danger to the electoral process itself. And this can, potentially cloud the electoral field and even jeopardize the whole process. The events in Zimbabwe right now, and, in fact, elsewhere on the continent, point to a need for measures to guard against the abuse of social media and, whether, people can seek to subvert the democratic process by abuse of social media. There's also a need for social media literacy among the citizens themselves to ensure that citizens appreciate the power that the internet gives them and to use it responsibly.